Hello, my friends. Welcome to me, your host, Christian Watson. It is wonderful to be with you guys here today, as I always say. Before I get started in this commentary today, let me ask you to do one thing. If you could please hit the like button, the subscribe button if you're new here, and if you could also please donate to my Patreon if you find my message to be useful to you, of course. Official C. Watson on patreon.com/official C. Watson. I would appreciate it immensely. So thank you so much, and let's get into this commentary. So, my friends, I'm noticing something. There is a great degree of political fluidity in our current political discourse. There are a lot of people, and I talked about this in a video before, that will say, well, I am a conservative. But what they really mean is that they're something like a libertarian, even if they have the trappings of what is considered to be a conservative these days. So, for example, a lot of people identify themselves by positions. Right? It's not uncommon to go on a congressional candidate's website and they say, well, I'm a conservative. I support Second Amendment. I support low taxes. I support limited government. The term conservative has become identified with those propositions. Now, the problem with this is that there are people that hold those same propositions who would not be considered conservative because they have a different moral foundation than what conservatism may imply. Right? I think that it's very important for us to understand ideologies in their moral foundation rather than in their political positioning. Because in all honesty, positions are just positions. Positions do not confer to me the reason as to why people hold those positions. You can say I'm a conservative, but what does that mean? But I oftentimes make use of the term libertarian-conservative. I say conservatarian sometimes. I don't like saying conservatarian a lot because there is a very popular article on the internet. Actually, it's one of the few articles that comes up when you search in conservatarianism on Google, and it's written by someone who, again, I think he basically identifies conservatarianism through positions and not through moral foundations. And that's just the wrong way to do political theory and political philosophy, in my opinion, because I mentioned this before. It gets redundant. Me knowing that you hold a certain position tells me nothing substantial about your moral theory, your moral framework. But I say this, and it elicits a lot of confusion. In fact, there was a comment on another video that said, hey, Christian, how can you be a libertarian conservative when conservatives are traditionalist and da-da-da-da? And it just signifies to me that we really need to get to a point in our political discourse where we can understand these terms outside of positions and more in terms of moral foundations and frameworks. So let me explain why I call myself a libertarian conservative. So conservatism is primarily about preserving certain things in society. Now, this is a universal feature of conservatism across the world. European conservatism is also about conserving something, so is American conservatism. But in addition to that, conservatism is necessarily going to be a reflection of whatever society that it's in. So a conservative person in Qatar is obviously going to be very different than a conservative person in the United States or in Britain. And vice versa, a British conservative like Roger Scruton is going to be very different from a conservative in America. For example, British conservatives like Roger Scruton are very skeptical, well, he was at least, of religion. He was very skeptical of guns, whereas most American conservatives hold those things to be inviolable, to be essential. The point is this: conservatism at its root is about conserving something, but that differs depending on which context that conservation is happening in. There are a lot of conservatives right now that are talking about conserving the environment as well in America. So it's very interesting. So I believe that it is paramount to the propagation of good moral character and the preservation of a certain kind of social order which lends itself to liberty to conserve the values which animated the conversations and the ideas which led to the document of the Constitution, to the preamble, and every other thing that is a moral foundation of America. I want to conserve the traditions which promulgate liberty. That's why I'm a conservative. Now, this does not, when people say they're conservative, they typically mean in a more broader scope. I want to conserve particular traditions. I don't care about tradition in and of itself. The difference between me and most traditionalist conservatives is that they care about tradition as making the man. They follow this very Aristotelian notion that society and the community make you who you are. I fundamentally reject that premise. Here's where my libertarianism comes in. So there is a philosopher, my friends, called Frank Meyer. He's called Frank Meyer, and Frank Meyer posed an interesting idea. If you've ever heard the word fusionism before, you will be very familiar with this man. He was a philosopher back in the 60s and 50s, and he basically mended libertarianism and conservatism together. He said, yes, we need to make sure we can preserve good moral character, and we can preserve certain traditions, but all of those rest within the sphere of the individual. The individual is paramount to any action that will preserve moral character and that will preserve traditions. The individual is at the center of all of that. Traditionalist conservatives say, no, it's the family, no, it's the church, no, it's the community. But in my estimation, there are none of those things without the individual. Does this mean we need to view ourselves in isolation from everyone else? No, of course not. But it means that the fundamental moral emphasis needs to be on how my rights flow, how my rights manifest, and not on how some abstraction manifests. This is what Frank Meyer understood. But yet Frank Meyer understood that virtue is important and character is important. So my conservatism is in wanting to, A, preserve the traditions of the United States, which particularly promulgate liberty. Any other tradition, in my estimation, in the estimation of the great Isabel Patterson, one of the most erudite libertarian minds to ever hit paper and pen, I have one of her books here, which was gifted to me by the editor of it. She said, I care about the traditions of liberty and not the traditions that just exist for the sake of existing. So I care about the traditions of liberty. If you promulgate liberty, I will protect that tradition. And yeah, and so that's my view on tradition. If you don't promulgate liberty, if you try to bind me and constrain me beneath arbitrary social norms that do not confer to an understanding of my rights, then I have to go. That's my libertarianism. Also, I fundamentally believe that individual rights are paramount above anything else. A traditionalist conservative may believe that individual rights are secondary to social cohesion. If my ability to live in ethical truth makes things discohesive, then so be it. Obviously, I want to make sure we can have a point in society where we aren't at each other's throats, but there are just some people who are so iconoclastic and so different that their mere presence threatens the structures of the old ways. But guess what? Anything solely for the sake of itself, in my opinion, is ultimately redundant. And so, I would just ask the traditionalist, if you're trying to preserve tradition for the sake of preserving tradition, what are you doing? What's the end? For me, freedom is not an end. Freedom is an ontological reality. And ontological simply means that it has to do with me as a human being. It's a reality that exists, and I'm simply trying to continue to maximize my ability to manifest that in an ethical way. So, that's really where my political philosophy sits. I believe in conserving certain traditions of the American experiment which promulgate liberty, and which may prescribe certain ideas of good moral character. But I ultimately think it is up to the individual and the individual's conscience to make the decisions that are relevant to their life and to make decisions that are relevant to being able to preserve their individual rights in a social context. I put fundamental social value on the individual while recognizing that there are outside forces other than the individual that can be found in tradition that can help us live moral lives. So that's my libertarian conservatism. What do you think, guys? Am I crazy? Am I wrong? Is Frank Meyer wrong? Because I basically agree with him. Or is I'm on to something here? I don't know. We'll see. As Socrates said, he who knows anything knows that he knows nothing. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that's how it is. So think on it, my friends. And again, if you could support me on PayPal or Patreon, my Patreon is Official C. Watson, patreon.com/Official C. Watson, or PayPal, which is officialcwatson@gmail.com. I would appreciate it immensely. We got a lot of good content coming up for you guys very soon. So just stay tuned. And as always, my friends, please, please, please stay pensive. I love you. Bye-bye.